We begin with that frightening incident in the skies above Detroit. Tonight, the alleged bomber was charged with trying to blow up Northwest Airlines Flight 253 from Amsterdam. The incident now appears to have been a major security breach, an al-Qaeda plot to blow up a U.S. airliner on Christmas Day. ABC News has learned that the suspect was known to U.S. authorities, trained by al-Qaeda, and his plot failed only because his bomb malfunctioned. Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, joins us from Connecticut. Brian?
David, information we learned today by our investigative team points to a plot organized by al-Qaeda in Yemen involving a powerful bomb hidden in the underpants of a suspect already on a U.S. terror watch list. Authorities say tragedy was averted only because the bomb's detonator did not work. U.S. officials tell ABC News the bomb was built and the plot organized by al-Qaeda leaders in the country of Yemen, at a location just north of the capital city of Sana'a. Authorities say the suspect, 23-year-old Farouk Umar Abdul Muttalib, spent months in Yemen being trained for the Christmas Day suicide mission. Investigators believe Abdul Muttalib was connected to al-Qaeda by the same radical cleric, American-born Anwar al-Awlaki, who's linked to the American Army major accused of opening fire at Fort Hood in November. According to investigators, the bomb used yesterday was built in Yemen by a top al-Qaeda bomb maker and contained more than 80 grams of a high-explosive chemical called PETM in a 6-inch plastic packet sewn into Abdul Muttalib's underwear and not detected by airport security.
Al-Qaeda knows very well what the various devices can do. They know this is a weakness.
Bomb experts say there was more than enough explosive to bring down the Northwest jet had the detonator not failed. Abdul Muttalib is the son of a wealthy Nigerian banker and has lived for years in this upscale London neighborhood. More than 100 chat room posts traced to his email account by ABC News show the course of his radicalization. In high school, he described himself as very ambitious and determined, concerned he would not get into college at Caltech, Stanford, and Berkeley because of his test scores. I tried the SAT, he wrote. It was a disaster. I didn't practice well, and I got 1,200. Then later, he wrote of joining protests against the war in Iraq, asking, when is lying allowed to deceive the enemy? And then finally, heading to Yemen.
This is the threat, the primary threat that we have to worry about now. People who have been radicalized in the United States, in Western Europe, people who have been radicalized in long distance on the internet.
A senior U.S. official tells ABC News tonight that the suspect's father became so concerned about his son, he actually went to the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria to tell them his son was a possible threat to the U.S., David.
But Brian, given that warning, why was he ever allowed on board that flight?
Well, he was put on a terror watch list along with about 550,000 other people. He was never put on the no-fly list, and his U.S. visa was not revoked. Apparently, according to U.S. authorities, because they said the father's information was not specific enough to take the more serious actions.
All right, Brian Ross, thank you.
And now it's time for part 4 of an InfoWars exclusive interview with Kurt Haskell, witness to the government cover-up of Delta Flight 253. Now, it is a fact that the U.S. government allowed the underwear bomber to board the plane even though he had no passport and was on the government terror watch list. Passenger Kurt Haskell famously witnessed a sharp-dressed Indian man force officials to let Abdul Muttalib board the plane, again, even though he had no passport and was listed as a potential terrorist. And of course, the establishment media, they have predictably remained silent on this epic story as they continue to regurgitate the official government fable of the underwear bomber. But fortunately for you, the InfoWars viewer, you are about to get a dose of the hardcore truth. An interview with Kurt Haskell, key witness to the false flag terror attack aboard Delta Flight 253, the subsequent government cover-up that followed.
Walk us through what you saw in Amsterdam.
Sure. Lori and I were sitting near the boarding gate, sitting on the floor. There weren't any seats to sit in. And I saw two men, and they caught my eye because they seemed to be an odd pair. One was what I would describe as a poor-looking black teenager around 16 or 17, and the other man, a age 50-ish, wealthy-looking Indian man, and I was just wondering why they were together. kind of strange. And I watched them approach what I would call the ticket agent, the final person that checks your boarding pass before you get on the plane. And I could hear the entire conversation. The only person that spoke was the Indian man. And what he said was, this man needs to board the plane, but he doesn't have a passport. And the ticket agent responded, well, if he doesn't have a passport, he can't get on the plane. To which the Indian man responded back, he's from Sudan. We do this all the time. And the ticket agent said, well, then you'll have to go and talk to my manager. And she directed them down a hallway. And that was the last time that I saw the Indian man. Mm-hmm. And the black man I didn't see again until he tried to blow up our plane.
I assume, though, that they're not patting people down in the crotch area, which is where this fellow allegedly had the bombs.
We could deploy the scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy in the U.S. that would give us the ability to see what someone has concealed underneath their clothing.
I also want to point out, in your current role as a security consultant, you are representing some of the companies who manufacture that technology, correct?
Absolutely correct.
One thing I'd like to point out is that the system worked.
Well, the underwear bomber case is important because it's the most, in my opinion, it's the most clear evidence of a false flag event by the U.S. government. I think if you actually take the time to look into the evidence, the official version is not backed up by anything other than statements by members of the government. There is actually a great deal of evidence that backs up what I'm saying. So it's important in that sense that it's a very clear picture that the U.S. government stages terrorist attacks to forward their agenda, whatever that may be at that time. Not only that, but if you look at how the government's treated this case, you can see all the tools they use when they use the false flag attack, which is, denying evidence and telling the media to not report certain things, blasting in the media all the unimportant things, propaganda issues that support their story, the government forwarded story, not the real story. And it just gives you a real window of how they handle these things. And if you look at the picture of this, how they handle things, and you see things happen in the future, you can take their playbook, if you will, and apply it to the ones in the future. And tell what's a false flag event or not. There had been no terrorist attacks on flights in the U.S. since 2001, so people were kind of getting, weary of the war on terror, thinking, hey, why are we spending all this money on the war on terror when there is no war on terror? Nothing's happening. We're not stopping anybody. Number two, we had when this happened in December 2009, we had certain parts of the Patriot Act that were up for renewal. They actually came up for renewal in early December 2009, just a couple weeks before this happened. And you can look it up on the internet. Hillary Clinton actually said, look, my constituents don't want to vote for the renewal. They don't think it's needed, and politically this will be damaging if, my party votes for renewal of these parts of the Patriot Act. So they delayed the vote till, I believe, February 2010, and look what happens in the meantime. There was a bill that had already passed the House of Representatives, and the bill was to restrict the use of body scanning machines to secondary use only, meaning you would only have to go through the body scanning machines after you had set off the metal detector. And this had already passed the House. It was pending before the Senate for a vote in early 2010. And again, look what we have in the meantime, the underwear bomber attack. Incidentally, despite the fact that this bill had already passed the House and was pending before the Senate, the TSA and Department of Homeland Security continued to order many more body scanning machines for the airports. So, read into that what you will. So, all of those reasons, really. And basically, they needed a crutch for the war on terror. Nothing was happening on the war on terror for many years. And now all you hear is, every time the war on terror is brought up, or these enhanced procedures are brought up, TSA here and TSA there, and if you see something, say something, it all goes back to the underwear bomber. They all say, well, we need it because of the underwear bomber. It's a crutch. It's a crutch for any of these policies at all. So, you know, you can see how it's played into all of this.
But there are a few things we could do to make things better. First, we could deploy the scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy in the U.S. that would give us the ability to see what someone has concealed underneath their clothing. That has been vigorously opposed by the ACLU and privacy advocates. The House of Representatives voted to prevent us from using it. But I think now there's been a very vivid lesson in the value of that machinery.
In your current role as a consultant, do you have an interest in body scanners?
We consult with all kinds of firms, including firms that do manufacture body scanners.
You do have some interest in more sales of body scanners.
As well as a lot of other security measures. But I would point out that I've talked about this for probably the last 3 years.
You know, I don't really have any evidence on whether Chertoff was involved, but, you know, it's really suspicious to me that the former head of the Department of Homeland Security now works for body scanning companies, and there's so much money going around. You know, did somebody do a favor for Chertoff here? You know, that was paid back with some money? I don't know. I think it's entirely possible, but again, I don't have any evidence on this, so I don't know. But yeah, it's highly suspicious that you have former head of Department of Homeland Security peddling body scanning machines and making who knows how much money off of them. Metal detectors were doing fine before the underwear bomber incident, and they were not the reason he got on the flight, obviously. So it's an unreasonable search, in my opinion, because all the body scanning machines are not necessary. They make you show a naked picture of yourself to unknown people, and they might cause you cancer. We don't know. But if you don't do that, you have to opt out. And therefore you have someone feeling you up, looking down your pants and grabbing you between the legs. That's an unreasonable search, so it's definitely a violation of the Fourth Amendment. When I talk to people about this, the main response I get is, well, whatever it takes to make me feel safe, and that's a pretty discouraging response to me, in my opinion, because Americans will just voluntarily give up constitutional rights based on a lie. It's ridiculous and depressing.
Coming up, are you willing to give up a lot of your privacy when you go through security at the airport? How about a revealing full body scan? Would that be okay with you?